Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for coming to A Healthcare Z this morning. Today's topic is top healthcare industry podcast and newsletters. As always, let's do a audio video check to start. So if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, if you could just please in the comments, let me know if you can see and hear me okay. That would be great. And then also too, throughout this presentation, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section of either LinkedIn or YouTube, and I will either answer them over the course of the talk or I'll answer them in writing afterwards. Do me a favor and go ahead and put a thumbs up as well if you could, because then that lets more people see this as well, because obviously we want to spread the word about improving healthcare as much as we can. So now, very briefly, as you all know about myself. So I'm Eric Bricker, MD. I'm an internist. I used to be a hospital finance consultant before going to medical school, then went to the University of Illinois for medical school, then did an internal medicine residency at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, worked as a hospitalist at the Baylor Hospital in Plano down here in Texas. I started a healthcare navigation firm called Compass Professional Health Services that grew to over 2,000 employer clients, about 1.8 million people over the course of 11 years, and we sold that business to Alight Solutions in 2018. And I started creating these A Healthcare Z healthcare finance educational videos for everybody who has any connection to healthcare whatsoever, because there's still a great misunderstanding of how healthcare and especially how the money in healthcare works. So thank you, all of you, for watching my A Healthcare Z videos. And I'm also now the medical director for an alternative health plan called Simple Pay Health. So now on to today's topic. We are going to go through some of the top podcasters and bloggers and newsletter writers, specifically in healthcare finance. And this is important because certainly I am not the only source of healthcare finance information that all of you should use. I myself use these sources that I'm going to tell you about today to help continue to educate myself about healthcare finance. And each of them has their own unique way that they add to my understanding of healthcare finance. And so I wanted to share that with you. So first off, we have Stacy Richter with the Relentless Health Value podcast. Now, Stacey is the president of Aventria Health Group, which is a healthcare marketing firm. And she has been doing the Relentless Health Value podcast for a very long time. You can see here on the slide, some of the episodes that I've highlighted here are like numbers 379. She's done over 379 podcasts. She's done even more than that. So this is a very widely listened to podcast, and of course, typically comes out about weekly. Of course, podcasts are fantastic because you can listen to them while you are driving or while you're doing work in the yard or the dishes or whatever, right? So podcasts are fantastic because they don't require your eyes. So as far as like listening to healthcare finance from an educational perspective, super helpful. I know a lot of insurance brokers that also listen to Stacy Richter's Relentless Health Value podcast. So I know I have a lot of insurance brokers and benefits consultants that are watching right now. So just know that your peers are listening to Stacy. Now, Stacy has multiple unique abilities. One of her unique abilities, she gets fantastic guests. So of course, one of the keys to the podcast are the guests. And man, oh man, can Stacy get fantastic guests. I mean, she comes up with these people. I've never heard of many of these people before. And they are really the experts in their particular niche of healthcare. A couple that I want to call out are one is episode 379 for AJ Lociano. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. So he's the CEO of Capital RX, which is a transparent pass-through PBM. And that particular episode is fascinating because it talks about the role that broker commissions from the current big three incumbent PBMs play in the distribution of those incumbent PBMs vis-a-vis the distribution of transparent pass-through PBMs. So I thought that was fascinating. He unearths dynamics that I was not aware of. The next one that I thought was a particularly good episode was episode 343 with Dr. David Carmouche, who used to be one of the head executive doctors at the Ochsner healthcare system in New Orleans and in the South. And he has since become one of the head executives over at Walmart Health. And so what he did at Ochsner and what he's doing at Walmart is incredibly instructive about because we all know about the retailization of healthcare and the retailization of primary care. And specifically what Walmart Health is doing is really being headed up by Dr. David Carmouche. And he talks about his experience at Ochsner as just a fantastic backdrop or proving ground before he went on to Walmart Health. Now, you, of course, can find Stacy Richter's Relentless Health Value podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. She also posts them on LinkedIn. So if you follow her on LinkedIn, it'll just show up in your feed. Now, you got to rely on the LinkedIn algorithm to have it show up on your feed. So it's not like guaranteed to show up on your feed. It depends. Okay. And then also she has a Twitter handle at Relentless Health. So Stacey does a fantastic job she's super knowledgeable. As you can imagine, having hundreds of guests, she herself has become quite the healthcare finance savant. And so she really asks pointed questions of these guests. So the key is that Stacey's secret sauce is she has fantastic guests and she asks them great questions. And so when you put that together, you get something that's really worth listening to. Okay. Next up, oh yeah, and also here, this is what the website looks like. So you can go to the Relentless Health Value website, and then here is the button for subscribing to the podcast. So you can also subscribe, so you can just get it in your email inbox. That's what I do. And you can see here, look at this, the most recent episode 397. We're almost up to 400 episodes now. The minefield that is PBM contract. And I got cut off there. And also some advice for EBCs, as employee benefit consultants, who are taking money under the table with Paul Holmes. So this is awesome because he is an attorney and he talks about a lot of the details that are sort of quote unquote hidden in PBM contracts with employers. So again, super erudite guests that are on Relentless Health Value. Okay, next up, we have Chris Deacon, and Chris is short for Kristen, and she is the former state of New Jersey head of benefits. That's not her official title, but she basically ran the entire health insurance plan, not only for the state of New Jersey employees, so all the people that are doing, clerical work for the state of New Jersey, but also like the state police officers and the corrections officers, but they also had tons of school systems within the state of New Jersey that also joined on to their plan. Now, she has subsequently left and has her own consulting company now that's referred to as Verson Consulting. Now, what is so awesome about Kristen, along with other things, is that she is an attorney. So when she started on as the head of benefits for the state of New Jersey, she didn't start as like a health insurance benefits person. So she kind of came from the outside, which is part of the reason why she was so effective, because she was able to put like fresh eyes on the state health plan. And she came up through the Department of Treasury, initially through Governor Chris Christie, but she was doing such an amazing job that even when the governors changed from a Republican to a Democrat, they kept her on. I mean, because they're like, look, she's doing such a fantastic job. This is not a politically partisan position. So she's worked under both Republican and Democratic administrations for the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey had 800,000 plan members. People are like, oh, New Jersey, it's such a small state. But you got to remember, the population density of New Jersey is super high. So the state has a huge population. If the geographic size of a state was equivalent to their population, New Jersey would be huge. Okay, so of course, states that have a lot of people have to have a large governments. And so the state of New Jersey government and the school systems are also very large. I mean, 800,000 people. Look at that. They had $4.8 billion, almost $5 billion a year of healthcare spend. That's way more than Walmart, right? So people talk about like, oh, Walmart spends, all this money on healthcare, and they do. But the point is that the state healthcare budgets for the employees of the state completely dwarf corporate America. Like it's not even close, right? And of course, what can every corporation do? They can cut costs other places, they can raise prices, they can buy businesses, they can do other things to increase their revenue to pay for their healthcare costs. Like the states are subject to their tax base. So it's not their sort of quote unquote revenue or their income is not super flexible. So it really is a pain point for states. And in fact, states really are on the bleeding edge of healthcare finance innovation because of the rock and a hard place that they are stuck. So she set up a reverse auction for their PBM contract where she pitted the PBMs against each other, and they totally gave the state of New Jersey much better rates than they would have had she not compete. I mean, this is the whole point of competition, right? Competition is a wonderful thing because it lowers prices, right? Competition is fantastic because it lowers prices, and that's exactly what ended up happening. And the state of New Jersey saved $1.6 billion over 3 years just from their PBM competitive contracting process. And this has actually been mimicked and used. This approach has been mimicked and used by other states after what Chris Deacon did. Now, she is such a principled person that she sought to hold Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the New Jersey Blue Cross plan, accountable for $34 million. They had a contract for a specific, ironically, health navigation service where, according to Chris, that Blue Cross of New Jersey, Horizon, was not holding up their end of the bargain. And so there were financial penalties on the order of $34 million that Blue Cross really owed back the state of New Jersey, but it was blocked by the governor. And so I don't know all the details, but there's actually a Bloomberg article about it. You can just Google Chris Deacon, State of New Jersey, Bloomberg, and you can read the Bloomberg article about it. And she ended up leaving. Now, she posts a lot on LinkedIn. And so, of course, many of you are also on LinkedIn as well. So if you follow Chris Deacon on LinkedIn, then she posts, pretty much daily. And it's a lot of regulatory issues that she posts about and legal proceedings. And she's actually reading the legal information, the legalese, if you will, because she's an attorney, and she translates it into plain English for all of us to understand. So of course, there is a really rapidly changing regulatory and legal environment in healthcare. And that's hard for us non-legal types to stay up to speed on. And so that's where I really find Chris Deacon's tremendous insight in regards to those regulatory and legal matters in healthcare on LinkedIn. It's fantastic. Okay, next up. Oh yeah, and then here's her Verson Consulting page. And if you go to the Insights tab at the top, then you can see she's written some blogs as well. So she's got a lot of good information there at the Verson website. Now, next up, Blake Madden with Hospitalogy. Now, Hospitalogy is an email newsletter that you can subscribe to, that I have subscribed to. And Blake has a really interesting background. So he is a former healthcare consultant with a company called VMG Health. And what in the world does VMG Health do? They do valuations they do a number of things, but one of the things they do is valuations of physician practices for when they are bought by large hospital systems. And of course, here on A Healthcare Z, You have heard me make videos about how the majority of physicians in America are no longer in independent practices. They are either employed by hospital systems, or they work for private equity firms, or they're working for these big retail companies like Walmart. So that entire and of all of those, the hospital system employment, the hospital system purchase of physician practices and the subsequent employment of those doctors by the hospital system, that has been the massive explosion over the past 5 years to 10 years. And Blake's former employer, VMG, is at the epicenter of that. So the hospital systems would hire VMG to be like, hey, we're going to buy that physician practice, or we want to buy that physician practice, primary care practice, cardiology practice, what have you. We need to have some sort of quote unquote third party do an assessment and evaluation of that practice to tell us how much it is worth. Is the practice worth 5 million? Is it worth 10 million? Is it worth 50 million? How much is the practice worth? And so that's what VMG would do. So he has had a front row seat to the M&A environment. And so he's had a front row seat, frankly, to the strategic decisions that hospitals make in regards to why they are buying these practices. He's had a front row seat as to why these physician practices are selling to these hospital systems. And so he takes that background, and he has subsequently left, and he just full-time does this Hospitalogy newsletter. This is his full-time job. What does that mean? Point number 2 here is that his industry research is incredibly extensive. So you can think of Blake as like, essentially a full-time journalist, reporter. He is scanning healthcare industry news literally all day long, every day, and then summarizing his findings in Hospitalogy. So what he gives you is a very broad view of what is happening in the healthcare industry as it relates to insurance carriers, hospitals. He covers regulatory issues as well. A lot of digital health matters as well. So whether it be Amazon's acquisition of One Medical, or CVS's acquisition of Signify, or of Oak Street Health. So of all these moves, right, there's a lot of chess pieces being moved around in healthcare in terms of mergers and acquisitions and partnerships and new companies being started. It's very difficult to keep up with, for myself included. And so that's where Blake, his newsletter comes out twice a week. And so that's where Blake does a very broad industry review where you can stay up to speed on what's going on. Now, because Blake has such a fantastic background, he really understands how healthcare works. He understands how healthcare works just as well, if not better, than I do. So it's not just the who, what, when, and where. He also gives you a good sense of the why. So why was Amazon buying One Medical? Why was CVS buying Oak Street? And it's the why, and when I mean why, I specifically mean the financial why, right? So many of the motivations and incentives within healthcare are financially driven, and Blake really understands the money in healthcare to give you the why in that newsletter. Now, he is part of a syndicate of bloggers and newsletter writers. It's called Workweek. So you actually find Hospitalogy on workweek.com, and then I'll show you the website in a minute. And then you click on healthcare to subscribe to his particular Hospitalogy newsletter. He also has a Twitter handle at @B_Madden if you follow people on Twitter. And then he's also on LinkedIn. So you can also see his Hospitalogy posts on both of those social media platforms as well. Now, next up, his colleague at Workweek is Jared Dashevsky. And Jared Dashevsky also has a newsletter / blog on Workweek that is called Healthcare Huddle. Now, Jared goes to the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And he is about to be a doctor. So he's going to graduate in like May. So he's got like, a couple of months. He's almost there. He's going to be an internist, just like myself. Of course, I think he chose a wonderful specialty to go into. And fascinating thing about Jared is he actually has a master's in healthcare systems engineering. So he really comes at healthcare from a systems engineering frame of mind and point of view. And I've made a Healthcare Z video specifically about how healthcare it really comes up short when it comes to industrial engineering, right? So industrial engineering is one of the three largest disciplines within all of engineering. And it's applied like all over the place in other industries. And it is just so minimally applied in healthcare. And it needs to be. I mean, if you could apply industrial engineering best practices to healthcare, it would make tremendous improvements. Now, so he looks at healthcare through the lens of an engineer, and I find that incredibly helpful. Now, unlike Blake, so I think the difference is that while Blake is doing a very wide range of healthcare industry issues, but doesn't go as deep, right? Because you're getting breadth, is that Jared goes very deep on one particular topic or maybe two particular topics in each of his newsletters. So and that's why the combination of the two is so fantastic. So you get both the breadth and the depth between both Blake's and Jared's newsletters. Now, he also is through Work Week and also has, and you go to the healthcare tab again to subscribe. I'll show you the website in a second. He also has a Twitter handle at Jared Dashevsky, and he's very active on Twitter. I think his tweets are fantastic. They're highly educational. That's one of the best ways that I follow him too. There's gobs of healthcare people on Twitter as well. So just know that, a lot of people are like, I'm not really a big Twitter person, but there actually is a lot of great healthcare information because not everybody on healthcare is on LinkedIn. There's a lot of healthcare people that share a lot of healthcare information on Twitter, and they're just not part of the LinkedIn ecosystem at all. That's just not what they do. But that being said, Jared is on LinkedIn. So if you follow Jared on LinkedIn, you'll also have his information show up on your feed. Okay, so there's the Workweek website, and just go to workweek.com. And then there's these tabs here. It's obviously very straightforward. You know exactly what web page you've landed on when you get there, right? Big yellow letters. And so then you click on this healthcare tab right here, and that takes you directly to a choice between Hospitalogy and Healthcare Huddle. So you can click on each of them and then subscribe. It's very easy to do, to subscribe to each of them. Now, finally, we have Dr. Lisa Bielamowicz and Chaz Rhodes, who are the founders of Gist Healthcare Consulting. And they publish a newsletter called The Weekly Gist. And they are really seasoned executive level healthcare consultants. And what they do is they specifically consult with really the CEOs and the boards of directors of large hospital systems across the country. They used to work for a sort of a very prominent healthcare strategy consulting firm that's referred to as the Advisory Board, which is now owned by United Health Group. That's right. So United Health Group owns a consulting firm that consults with hospitals on how hospitals can increase healthcare costs in America. That's right. So like literally hospitals are like, but how can we improve our revenue? How can we get more patient volume? How can we increase our prices? Let's go to the advisory board. They'll tell us how to do this. So the same company that's telling employers that they're going to help control their healthcare costs is also telling hospitals how they can increase their income. So they're totally playing both sides of the same coin. Now, they left the advisory board. I don't know the reason, but it was around the time that United bought the advisory board. So they probably just wanted to be independent and on their own. And they really shared tremendous insights of the direction that hospitals are going in America. And listen, if you work in healthcare and if you're a health insurance broker, like you can't just know about insurance because the underlying driver for healthcare costs in America is the doctors and the hospitals. and because it's the doctors that prescribe the prescriptions, okay, and they're performing all their tests and procedures in hospitals. So if you want to understand healthcare, you have to understand doctors and hospitals. And so you can't just rely on the insurance carrier to educate you about how doctors and hospitals work, because they're not going to give you the whole story. You have to go directly to other sources to learn about the drivers of healthcare costs and healthcare quality in America, other than insurance carriers. You have to have another point of view than their propaganda. So I'm sorry, their education. So the gist, the weekly gist newsletter, fantastic way to do that. Okay, now their weekly newsletter has the week's news. So again, they do kind of a Blake hospitalogy sort of like review across healthcare, which is very helpful. Two, they really have a deep dive graphic, and a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So their graphic that they have every week, like I'll sit there and I'll look at this graphic for like 10, 15 minutes because it's so dense with information that I have made A Healthcare Z videos that are just entirely about one graphic that they've created because they are so educational. And arguably the best part of their weekly gist is their From the Road segment, where they anonymously share conversations that they have with hospital executives about like what's really going on. And so they're telling you like the truth of what's being discussed behind closed doors. And that is super helpful. Okay, so again, what you're going to do here. So anyway, I really appreciate them putting out this newsletter. You go to their Gist Healthcare website, and then you can go to their weekly gist, and they got a podcast as well. And then you can subscribe to it. Now you have to scroll down to the bottom of the weekly gist to actually subscribe. So I don't want to say it's hidden, but it's a little hard to get to. And that's how you then subscribe to it. Okay, so then with that, what are the take-home points for today? This is a quote. I don't know whoever said it, but I'm sure you've heard it before. If you don't read, it's the same as not being able to read. So listen, Warren Buffett reads 7 hours a day, and he's a billionaire. It seems to have worked out pretty well for him. So it is beholden on us to constantly educate ourselves. We need to be autodidacts is the fancy word for that. And of course, listen, part of the adult world is no one is going to spoon feed you your education. You need to be a seeker. And you will differentiate yourself, especially as a broker benefit consultant. I know for a fact broker and benefits consultants have taken my A Healthcare Z videos. They have sent them to HR people and used that as a conversation piece to get in the door as a lead. And then they have subsequently won the business. So literally, your better understanding of the issues at play within healthcare will help you grow your book of business. If for your existing book of business, it will help retain your existing customers because you will be a true expert in the eyes of your employer customers. And I will tell you, you can win huge groups with this. I have seen benefits consultants with major benefit consulting firms who, with huge clients with hundreds of millions of healthcare spend, and these benefit consultants did not know what they were talking about. So you can totally beat them out through superior knowledge, because they have huge clients and work for a big company, that doesn't mean they know more than you, because they don't. I've literally seen it in meetings. Okay, so you need to triangulate multiple sources so that you don't miss things. Don't only use me, use a variety of sources. The fact that these are non-journalist, under the radar sources, I find them to be super helpful, because journalism is helpful, but to have people who have actually worked in the industry who then share their knowledge is different than having a journalist who is a career journalist, because to a certain extent, a career journalist has always been on the outside, whereas these people have been on the inside. Okay, traditional sources, whether it be the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, again, you need to use that as part of your triangulation process. But especially, I will not say that carriers are lying in their information. They are not. But what they are doing is they do leave out information. And so just know that if you only rely on health insurance carriers for your information, there is huge swaths of information that is being left out that you are not going to be aware of unless you have these other sources. Okay? So as a result of this, you're going to be ahead. Things that I learned because of these sources are that, look, value-based care was not real. It's a big nothing burger. It is not nearly what it is touted to be. I learned that from all these people. The fact that there was a the fact that there was a carrier windfall from COVID. Everyone's like, oh, COVID's coming. The health insurance carriers are going to be in like financial destitute because of blah, blah, blah. But no, they made gobs of money because of COVID. And I knew that early. I knew that before Milliman. I made a video and Milliman was like, well, it's a little early to say that. And then literally like 2 weeks later, they made the exact same conclusion that I made. And it wasn't because I was smart. It was because I was listening to these other people. Okay. And then lastly, that I knew that employer healthcare costs were going to go down because of COVID. Everyone's like, oh no, what's going to happen to the employers? Like an employer healthcare budget actually didn't go down at all because of didn't go up at all because of COVID. It actually went down. Again, not because I had some sort of like fancy insight or intelligence or whatever, but just because I had my radar up and I heard it from these people. So with that, we've come to the end of the half hour. I want to thank you all for being here. I will go to your questions here at the end. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. If you would like a copy of these slides, please email me. They're at ericb@ahealthcarez.com. I'd be happy to send you the slides. If you would like to subscribe to my own newsletter, just email me and I'll add you to my A Healthcare Z video newsletter. Let me go here to some of your questions and comments. Kathy, thank you. Readers are leaders. That's totally true. Lee says industrial engineering and quality concepts is exactly what companies like Nordstrom adopted in the 1980s to improve and serve quality. Yes, Toyota Production System, Nordstrom, all these places. Absolutely. Let me keep going here. All right. Okay, here's from an anonymous LinkedIn user. It says New Jersey governor blocked a settlement that would have paid back the state and thereby citizens of the great state of New Jersey. Shocker, most densely populated state in the union, and not only in terms of citizens. Thank you for that additional piece of information. Someone just recently left a leadership position at Horizon. Thank you for tuning in. Well, listen, everybody, again, this is like my favorite time of the week. You folks are fantastic in your continued effort to improve healthcare. It's not easy. The progress is slow, but I want to thank you for your effort. I think you deserve a fantastic weekend of rest. So thank you so much for joining, and I will see you again here next Friday at 8 a.m. Central. Bye now.